Now I just was laying a toothpick across those blades while I was doing that, because I didn't want to displace them by blowing on them. I'm looking at the state of the shutter. Everything looks good. Looks ready to put the case back over it. That can only go on one way because that post has to come through it. Yeah, that's in position. And there were 4 case screws. One of them was marked handily by the previous repairer with the X. X marks the spot where the long screw fits in this case. Normally I just get 1 screw in there, 1 screw in opposite. Now don't do the screws up tight at this point. Got to check that the blades are correctly positioned and haven't become displaced. That all looks good. Of course you're looking through the glass here, so it's not so easy to see. That's fine. Those blades move nicely. Get the other 2 screws in place and then do the 4 screws up. Those screws can be tightened now. That's that. If we release the shutter, that's very snappy in its action. I'm very pleased with that. The detent spring. This spring acts to hold the shutter blades in the closed position so that it helps to snap the shutter blades closed firmly. It needs to be hooked into position over that post. Goes round that screw head, the tail of it, the little right angle bent tail on the spring goes behind that long screw that came through the case. And it doesn't stick up very far high in this case. Okay, normally it sticks up much more proud than that. That's better. Spring's in position. Now I've got to hook the tail of it behind the post on the blade actuating ring. There we go. Cock the shutter. Very nice snappy action there. I'm very pleased with that. I've got my switch contacts that go back through the case, and I've got my flash contact and retard gear train here. Now the retard gear train, I'm going to clean that by giving that 10 minutes in the ultrasonic cleaner, I think, and some naphtha. And that'll just blow away any accumulated oils, grease, dust and dirt. I'll be back. Here I've got that little crossbar from the shutter cocking shaft sitting in a pin vise. So I'm just cleaning up that damaged edge, and that had just been caused by someone being too rough removing it. That can be fitted back to the shutter now, and it should just press into place. See if I can get my pliers onto that. Nope, too far. There it is. That's back in position. No great drama there. That piece is done. Now my speed train I have cleaned that in the ultrasonic cleaner. I've also lubricated this lightly with some graphite powder. Now, this tab here on the speed train, this thing here is floating around loose. That operates our flash contact, and that has to hook over the pin here on the top of that comes up from the blade actuating ring. So that's the only complication when fitting this thing back into the shutter, is making sure that that little U-shaped piece there actually ends up hooked over that point there. And it is a minor complication. If you can get it back in the first time correctly, you're doing better than I did. Yeah, it looks like it's sitting there. Now the two screws held this speed train down in place. A single screw at this end. And one at the other end. Just checking that that U-shaped piece is sitting where it should be. There it is now, it certainly is. One plain screw there. You have to say these screws are a bit undernourished and the head size isn't particularly stunning either. And one here through the flash contact. Now that flash contact is supposed to come back to touch the case there. This actually sits on top of the retard gear train at this point. Get that into position. It looks like I'll have to bend that flash contact slightly to get that correctly positioned. Let's get that screw down in place. Tighten that one up. Tighten the one up at the other end of the speed train. And I'm just looking at the flash contact here. I want to make sure that that actually closes, that the moving contact here touches the pin when the shutter opens. And that it's not making contact before that point, which it appears to be. Just bend that contact away slightly. Well, that flash contact is a little bit flexible for my like. Just see what's happening. Yep, I think that looks good. I think that'll do the job for me. Alright, check those two screws again. As for the rest of the shutter, what do I want to do? I've got the contacts to go back through. This was for the switch. And this one, this piece of plastic insulator is a little bit mutilated looking. It's just been cooked with the soldering iron really, and it's got a bit tatty looking at the end. If I tip that upside down, it might go in better. Now I've got two contacts. The one without the insulator presumably went in first. That's effectively our earth or ground connection. And the other side goes in second. They go down through the same hole, but only one of them has an insulator on it. Okay. That's fun. Let's pop this down the hole. There was a washer. And a long screw that went down through that pair. Alright, so from the base what I'm going to do is clean off this remains of solder that's sticking on these things. Then feed up my insulated plastic on one of those leads from the bottom. So I'll just go and do that with the soldering iron just to clean that up. I probably should have tidied those contacts up previously. Well, it was actually possible to get that contact down here correctly positioned, insulated correctly along its full length so that it doesn't come in contact with anything. And this just forms the switch. The action of the switch I have yet to confirm, but it looks like it should go, and certainly electrically at the moment those two contacts are separated. Clearly the one here without the insulation on, that's the earth or ground side, and this is the opposite side there. And it is simply a switch. There's no polarity there to worry about. The two wires that came off that switch that was soldered on the back of the shutter, it doesn't matter which one of those goes in that position. So the shutter is fairly well advanced here. Do I need to do any more on the front of this before I close up the back of it? What have we got to go on the back? The control rings there, and then the aperture control dial, which I've got there. And they do go on the back of the case. And that does go on in that direction. Alright, well I'll clean those components up quickly. I'll give that a wipe of some molybdenum paste too, just to make sure that it does revolve smoothly, that there's no undue friction there. That's all pretty clean anyway, and this piece pretty much just retains it in position. So, quick wipe of molybdenum paste on the inside's all we need to worry about at this stage. On that ramp, that's where it contacts the needle that moves the meter. I'll just rub some up there. Now that's quite rough on its surface there. That'll make for a rough feel in the way that thing moves. And this ring goes on in only one position, does it? Yes. And it goes on there. Three screws hold this in place. Bit of a rattly sort of a feel to that. Still, I think that'll be fine. Does this ring go on from the front? If it does, how does it couple? Well, it looks like it goes on from the front. It must couple through that pin into that slot. No, it's not lined up correctly. Now it is. Yeah, that rotates freely. Okay, I'll know how that works. I'll clean that component up. We'll give that a light lube, I think. Had a bit of a gritty feel to the action. Don't think there's anything seriously wrong here. Let's get that separated. Wonder whether I should split these two components. Suppose I could. I'll just clean these two components up and make sure that that dust is wiped out. Yeah, there's certainly a degree of dust in there. Nothing too serious. It's not like buckets of beach sand or anything, but we can do without it. These adjustments are often quite stiff, even at the best of times, so let's get this high friction rubbish out. There's certainly grit there that's glued in place with the old dried out lubricant. You can see how much dirt's coming off there, it's quite a bit. Now how does that feel on there? That feels quite good. Now getting this back on in the right position. Can only go on in one position, can't it? Yeah, it's quite a rough feel here. Let's just put a bit of molybdenum paste on there. It may be that one or other of these rings is slightly distorted too. It's possible that these serrated teeth here are sitting slightly proud and that's rubbing. No, it doesn't appear to be it. Right, I'll put that spring back in place. That's pretty gritty. Let's clean that. This is the film speed setting. Okay, so is that the wrong way up? Right, that just drops into position and is held in place with a single screw. And that's passing through that spring which keeps that under tension. Well, you can't see any of that, can you? Because I've got my big fat fingers in the way. Sorry about that. That's that. Oh yeah, that's much better. That moves much smoother. Right, that's good.